Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
And welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska, somewhere where it's kind of cloudy and gray and sort of dank here in Anchorage. And I understand my friends in Juneau have rain showers all day, and it's dank and cloudy and rainy. And how about you, John? John Quick, my co-host in Kenai, Nikiski, to be exact. How are you doing?
Doing good. It's a great weekend out here on the Kenai Peninsula. It was sunny, and we, my family, we bought a new trampoline. So we put a brand new trampoline up thanks to Walmart. Don't hold it against me that I shopped at Walmart, but they have
made in China.
Yeah, it's all right. It was $250. So, it's a great deal, and it'll provide. Our last trampoline lasted 7 years. So this is going to be pretty exciting. But the political news on the peninsula is the city council for the city of Homer voted not to support the patient advocacy bill, which was honestly not too surprising because there's a lot of very liberal folks on the Homer City Council, and not a lot of them are too fond of Representative Vance. And so I think it was less, do we even agree with this, and more, we just don't agree with anything Sarah does. So there was a lot of conservatives that were not conservatives, and honestly, a lot of the middle of the road folks that just experienced loved ones that were sick during COVID and couldn't go visit their mom that was dying or their dad that was dying. Is very sad. And a lot of them were a little bit perturbed by this kind of slide of the Homer City Council. So that's the scuttlebutt on the peninsula for the weekend.
Yeah, and I did read about that in the Homer News, and that was sort of the impression that I got, John, is that it's not so much that they don't want people to see their loved ones when they're dying. They're not heartless people, but they just don't like Sarah Vance, and they don't want to give her a win. And so this just becomes sort of a political thing. And so, we have a pretty good newsletter this morning. And if you don't subscribe to the Must Read Alaska newsletter, I hope you just go to our website, go to the right-hand side at the top. It says newsletter, just plug in your email address. And then every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you can get caught up in all the news, because we really do put out quite a lot of news, and you may miss it. But there's always stuff in the newsletter as well that you will not find online. This morning, there's an item in there about how much rent has gone up around Alaska. And you'll be happy to know, John, that down in your neighborhood, the average cost of rent has only risen like 3.6% this year, whereas in Anchorage, it's risen 11.1%. And Fairbanks is, 5% or something, and Juneau's like 4%. But you'll find things in the newsletter that you don't find anywhere else. And of course, thank you for joining us on the Must Read Alaska Show. For those of you who are just tuning in now, we have an amazing guest with us today. And before that, John, will you thank Charlie Pierce for sponsoring our show?
Yes, thank you, Charlie Pierce for Governor, for sponsoring the show. Because of his sponsorship, we're able to get conservative news for all the nooks and crannies of Alaska. So thanks so much, Charlie Pierce for Governor, for sponsoring not only this show, but all of our shows for the last month or so. So it's pretty awesome.
It is really great to have a sponsor. It really helps us cover our costs. Thank you, Charlie Pierce for Governor. Your support is amazing, and we really appreciate it. Well, our guest today is Tara Sweeney, and Tara Sweeney is running for the U.S. House of Representatives for the state of Alaska. Welcome to the show, Tara.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. And you and I have known each other for many years, not real well, but our paths cross at conferences and at various events. And we wanted our viewers and listeners to be able to get to know you, because some of our listeners are not going to be familiar with you. You know, your name is showing up around on advertisements. Of course, it's right in back of you on this screen. For those of you who are listening in, Tara has a screen in back of her that says Tara Sweeney, U.S. Congress, and a star above her head. It's a very nice logo. But we wanted people to get a chance to know you a little better, because you are one of probably the top 4 or 5 contenders for this seat at this point, and rising, I think, in terms of visibility very quickly. Just to remind people of who you are, I'm just going to go briefly over the most recent highlights. You were the co-chair of the Don Young campaign this cycle before he passed on March 18th. And so then after that, you filed for office, I believe, on April 1, on the last day of filing. A lot of people filed. You filed on April 1. And so I just wanted to ask you, what made you decide to run? And did Don ever tap you on your shoulder and tell you, like he told Josh Revak, that you were going to be the heir apparent for this, that he wanted you to be the next member of Congress for Alaska? And just what was the deal with that?
Thank you, Suzanne, for having me on and for the dialogue. My first conversation with Congressman Young happened around 2016, where we were sitting in his office and I was asking him questions about what it was like to serve in his capacity. We did talk about succession for his seat, and he asked me a number of pointed questions. And a testament to his leadership really is about his ability to recognize Alaskans who were interested in serving and having discussions with them. I know that I wasn't the only person that he talked to, and he recognized that there were many of us that were interested in serving Alaskans in the United States Congress, and he encouraged us to do so.
Right, because I guess what I've heard is that a number of people had these kinds of conversations with him and felt like they had been tapped on their shoulder to run in his stead, and when the time came. And I've heard this from a number of people as they, as my paths cross. And I'm just curious, why did Ann Young decide to endorse just Josh Revak, not you? You were both co-chairs of this campaign. It seems like you were both like doing a ton of work for Don and representing incredibly well. And so what made Ann just sort of go one direction?
Well, I can't speak for Ann Young. I have a lot of respect for her and I love her dearly. What I can tell you is that I know that I had conversations with Congressman Young, and I want to lean into the work that we did on behalf of Alaska for many, many years, walking the halls of Congress and advocating for issues that were really important to our state's economy.
Right. Go ahead, John. You're next.
So Tara, I have a question for you. I think one of the really cool spots on your resume is that, forgive me if I get the dates wrong or the title wrong, but in 2018, President Trump nominated you to serve as the 13th Assistant Secretary of the Indian Affairs at the U.S. Department of Interior. I think that is such a huge honor to have somebody from Alaska, and I think you were the first Alaskan native to serve in that capacity. So talk to us a little bit about how that happened and just kind of what you felt in the process. It's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so just talk to us a little bit about that.
Thank you. Yes, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm really proud of the work that I did under the Trump administration and working with President Trump and Ivanka Trump on issues impacting Native American communities. We worked on Operation Lady Justice together, which was a task force that was created through executive order by President Trump to address the crisis, the epidemic of missing and murdered Native Americans across the country, including Alaska. And one of the accomplishments during that time was also to open a cold case office in Alaska to bring closure to families and justice for the victims of murder and those that are still missing. The nomination process was a long process, and it certainly opened my eyes to the strategy for nominees who have to go through and meet with members of the Senate within the committees of jurisdiction for that position. And in my case, it was the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. And walking through and meeting with all of the senators, listening to them, their issues, and walking into a committee hearing where, or at least I did, that some members of the committee were going to be in favor of my nomination, and others were certainly had questions. And when Maria Cantwell, the senator from Washington, began her line of questioning to challenge my nomination, I stood up to her, and that's something that as an Alaskan, as a candidate for Congress, I'm willing to do and fight for Alaska.
Very good. Yeah, that was really intense to watch, and it was very disturbing to watch some of the hostility coming from that committee. Absolutely uncalled for hostility, and I never quite understood why, other than perhaps because of your association with Native corporations and the fact that that's kind of a unique thing in Alaska, and other states don't have that. And there is a certain divide there. Well, let's talk a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up, because we want people to get to know you as a person as well. You are very unique in that you grew up way up north.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, I grew up in rural Alaska, and my parents were teachers at the beginning of their careers, and grew up in Norvik the first years of life, and then moved to Barrow, where my family is from, Wainwright. In Bethel, my father, I spent my 5th grade year at Kilbuck Elementary School in Bethel, and my junior high and high school years, for the most part, in Unalakleet. I moved back home my senior year to Barrow and graduated, moved on to Cornell University. And when I graduated from Cornell, I moved back home to Alaska because that's where I wanted to be.
Right. And Cornell is a very intense university. That is sort of that, I guess it is part of the Ivy League. It's a really intense university, also a land grant university. It's probably the only land grant university that's Ivy League. What did you study when you were there?
Industrial and labor relations.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure I know what that is. That's dealing with unions.
Dealing with unions, yeah.
Oh my God.
On both sides, private sector and with the unions as well.
Good for you.
And you played rugby too, didn't you?
I did. I was an open side flanker, number 7, first 15.
I guess that helps you when you're dealing with unions too. And do you have siblings as well?
I have a younger brother and an older sister.
Yeah. And are your parents still around?
My mother passed away in 1996, but my father is still living with us in Palmer.
Okay, very good. So after college, then you came back and did you go right into Native Corporation work at that point? And so give us a sense of that.
So I started with Arctic Slope Regional Corporation in 1996. And I started as a special assistant to the president and first vice president in Barrow at the headquarters. Quickly realized, or management realized, that I wanted operation experience. And so I was transferred to Houston Contracting Company, which was a pipeline construction company within the Arctic Slope family, and worked there for many years. And throughout my tenure, over 20 years, or approximately 20 years at ASRC, moved throughout the company. I left in 2018 when I was nominated, and the position that I held was Executive Vice President for External Affairs. Right.
Nice. So that's really interesting. And so then you went to the Trump administration and you worked as the director of the BIA for pretty much the entire time, right?
Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. One thing that folks don't realize is Indian Affairs is an umbrella organization, and inside that organization, you have several bureaus. You have the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you have the Bureau of Indian Education, and the Bureau of Trust Fund Management, in addition to a number of independent offices that help carry out the federal government's trust and treaty responsibility to federally recognized tribes.
It's a huge job. So it's not just Bureau of Indian Affairs, it's education and all these other treaty organizational things that you have to navigate, which are very, very tricky, because we have treaty relationships with tribes across the United States, and it's contentious almost all the time, 24/7, isn't it?
I would say so. There are a lot of challenges. You're dealing with public safety issues, education, certainly law enforcement, social services issues, in addition to managing the assets of Native American accounts and energy production on Indian-owned lands.
Yeah. Well, now on your campaign now, you have a lot of support from the Native community and for the Native corporation community, as well as a number of your contemporaries who are, especially Native women, who have gathered around to support your candidacy. And so let's talk about that. You've got an independent expenditure group that you can't coordinate with, but that's running a whole lot of advertising on your behalf. And we appreciate them for advertising with us. You obviously can't really get involved in that, because these things have to be separate. Right. But is your campaign being run primarily through the independent expenditure groups, or are both equal?
Oh, no. So I don't have daylight into what is happening on the independent expenditure side. So I like any Alaskan who may see a sign or hear something or see something through social media, I'm learning about those efforts as well. I have my own campaign. I have set up a completely independent structure. Karina Waller, former legislative director for Senator Ted Stevens, and executive director for the Ted Stevens Foundation. She's taking a leave of absence to manage my campaign. I also have Kristen Mellinger, Christina Woolston, and Admiral Barrett as the co-chairs for my campaign. And we have a number of other women in leadership roles throughout my campaign. Laura Edmondson is serving as my treasurer. And I have policy support from Kate Wolgamuth and also Marliana Hall.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So some really, really high octane women from the business community.
Absolutely.
So, Tara, I have a question for you. So, the field is packed. We have 48 men and women. Santa Claus is in there. As you think through who possibly could be the top four, what separates you from the pack? What makes you different? What are you going to bring to the table that somebody else in the top four possibly wouldn't, or you have a different flavor of how you're going to accomplish what you're going to accomplish?
Thanks. Thank you for that question. I believe that I represent the fabric of Alaska. I bring that rural Alaska perspective, coupled with my business background as a corporate executive and currently a small business owner, in addition to my federal government experience. I feel that I'm the best equipped to serve Alaskans. I have worked alongside our congressional delegation for over 20 years, both in the House and in the Senate. And so I have an acute understanding of the mechanics of the congressional process, but also my executive branch experience with President Trump, implementing the laws that Congress has passed and understanding from the executive branch the challenges it takes to implement good public policy.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, we've got other lawmakers there in Washington, D.C. We have Dan Sullivan, we have Senator Lisa Murkowski, who is also running for office. And I know that you've supported her in the past. You've done fundraisers for her and such. And you're running your own race. I presume you're going to support her as well. But I mean, how do you see that relationship evolving if you are elected and she is also elected? What is your relationship with Lisa going to be like?
I think, I'm an Alaskan for Alaska First, and people have heard me say that. I go back to the fact that I'm a Don Young, Ted Stevens Republican, and the ability for the Alaska congressional delegation to work together is something that is unique to our state. And you don't see that across the Senate and the House or across throughout Congress. There are other states that may not enjoy that same sort of relationship. And that's what makes our state unique and successful, and why we're able to, I would say, bring services and support for the state of Alaska. It's because of that tight-knit, good working relationship.
Right. And then of course, I guess the same would be said maybe if for some reason Kelly Tshibaka prevails. I mean, Kelly Tshibaka is running against Lisa Murkowski. She's a really different personality than Lisa, and she's younger, she's more fiery, she's probably much more conservative. How do you see that relationship working if you've also aligned yourself with more with Lisa? How do you see navigating that?
So my leadership style is collaborative. It's about bringing people together. Again, Alaskan for Alaska. I want to work with a delegation that is willing to roll up their sleeves on the Senate side and support what is important to Alaskans. As one member of Congress, out of 435, it's going to be imperative that I also build my own relationships on the House side. And so it's about working together. I think that this country is extremely divided right now. And we need to, if Alaska is going to continue to enjoy the success that it has through the public policy process, we need a delegation that can work together.
No, we sure do. We sure do. And we sure need a delegation right now. We've been without a congressperson for several weeks now, and we've got practically on the verge of World War III, and we've got a lot of stuff going on. And we are very eager to have somebody in there. So you're running for both the temporary seat that will fill out the remainder of Don Young's term in office up to January for when the new session starts, the new term starts, and the new person is sworn in. And you're also running for that seat as well, which is the 2-year seat. Mm-hmm. And then that would be something that we would hope that you would be able to do for many, many years to come to build up that seniority that Alaska needs, because we only have one, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, now let's talk about a tough issue. This is probably the toughest question so far, and that is one that always comes up in every panel. It's about abortion, because abortion is obviously very touchy right now. We've got laws being passed around the country to start ratcheting down from 20 weeks to 16 weeks, and in fact, I think Mississippi has moved its abortions. Legal abortions down to 15 weeks. And so where do you stand on this and in terms of Roe versus Wade and whether or not we should be tightening up some of that?
Thank you. I take a libertarian approach on this issue. I believe in the sanctity of life, and I'm personally pro-life. I do believe that we need to find ways to reduce the amount of abortions, but I don't believe taxpayer funds should be used to pay for those abortions. At the same time, I don't believe that the government has a role in the reproductive choices of women.
So period, does that mean all the way up to viability? I mean, because some people really are at the place where they think the woman has a right to end that life all the way up to 40 weeks, or even maybe after the baby's born. And in some cases, I've actually heard people think that after the baby's born, that the woman still has a right to put it out of its life. Everybody's got a line somewhere. And what do you think your line is on this one?
Well, I do believe that there should be exceptions based off of the facts of the situation, rape, incest. But again, I go back to the fact that I do believe in the sanctity of life.
Yeah. Okay. So sanctity of life and at the same time, a libertarian approach to letting other people decide what the sanctity of life means to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, and now on the issue of transgenders playing in sports came up at the Republican convention, and it was really a kind of an interesting scenario because nobody really had a lot of time to dive into this one very deeply. And I think you came out with a compassionate remark saying we want to be careful, we don't want to be hateful, and we want to really ensure that people who are going through gender confusion or gender identity issues are treated with care. And it may have come out a little differently than what you intended. So what is your opinion about transgenders playing in women's athletic competitions? How do you feel about this?
Well, so I'm going to answer your question. I want to go back to the convention because we had 30 seconds.
Exactly.
And I was raised with the entire impact value system, and one of those is compassion. And so I lead with compassion. But with respect to transgender males playing in women's sports, I don't support that. I do believe that there have been a lot of gains through Title IX for women in sports, and so many people have fought for the right for women to even play sports. And so no, I don't support that. I played rugby in college, as you mentioned earlier, Suzanne, and that's a full contact sport. And I do know that I would not feel comfortable playing necessarily against a man. They ruck harder, they maul harder, they tackle harder. It's a safety issue. And so I appreciate you allowing me more than 30 seconds to provide an answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't want you playing rugby against a man either. That would seem like a terribly unfair advantage. And there's a reason that we don't see women tackles in football as well. That's a full contact sport, and women certainly wouldn't be safe. Although we do have a few women who are now kickers on college football teams, which is interesting. So that's changed a little bit. John, what do you have?
Tara, so I got a question for you. Who's it somebody in your life that you look up to? Who's a hero to you? Who's inspired you through the years to, you have I'm just getting to know you, but your resume speaks of going above and beyond and kind of knocking the ball out of the park and going the extra mile and, being appointed by a President Trump, is a once in a lifetime deal like I talked about before. What has inspired you throughout your years to do what you do?
I have always answered this question with the same person, and that's my grandmother, May Amama Paniyu. She passed away in 2017, and she was just a remarkable woman, strong, unconditional with her love for all of her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. And she, when I talk about being raised within the Inupiaq value system, it was through her leadership and her love that really helped shape who I am today. My mother is also another woman that I looked up to and have had a very strong relationship with. And it was through the experiences of their lives that really helped, I think, ground me as an individual and give me kind of that grit and strength to work with no fear.
Awesome.
That's just amazing. I love hearing that about your grandmother. So let's talk a little bit about how people can get to know you and find you on the campaign trail, where you'll be in the next few weeks, how people can reach your website, and so those kinds of details, because I know we're running out of time here. Are you going to be at some forums soon? What's up next for you?
Certainly traveling to Kenai and Fairbanks. Also was recently invited to a rural debate in Bethel on May 6th. I will be at the Resource Development Council or the Alliance group debate on May 12th. And folks can find me on social media. My handles are the same at Tara for Alaska. And my website is www.taraforalaska.com. You can certainly check out my website. There should be a bio on there now. And if you're seeking information, you're more than welcome to email the campaign at info@taraforalaska.com.
info@taraforalaska.com. And for those of you who are watching or listening, the election is, you should have a ballot in your mailbox now. So people should have their ballots by today. I know some people received them on Friday and Saturday. Others probably will get them today. I haven't received mine yet, but I'm expecting I'll get it today. And you will see a very daunting ballot. So it has 48 names on it, and they're in alphabetical order, but it depends on which part of the state you're in, what part of the alphabet it's going to be starting in. We've got 40 districts, and so there are 40 different ballots and a different person at the top of each ballot. And on this ballot, it is not a ranked choice voting ballot. You just pick one. So you pick one on this ballot, and then the top 4 people who get votes will proceed to the August 16th election. And that during that election, there will be a ranked choice opportunity to experiment around with this new ranked choice stuff that all the cool kids are doing, I guess. And so this is an open primary. All 48 are on the same ballot. There are people from the Libertarian Party, the Republican Party, the Democrats, lots of undeclareds. And I'm not sure if there are any other parties on there, but this is for the temporary filling out the rest of Don Young's seat. So we won't know who the winner is of this particular election until early September. And that person, maybe it will be Tara, who's our guest today, will be sworn in, and then they will serve until January. In the meantime, we've got another election, and Tara will also be on that ballot in August, and that will be the primary for the regular election. It's very confusing. It's confusing mostly because we have 2 general election cycles going on at the same time in the same year. So we're going to have 4 statewide elections. And it's, don't feel bad if you're confused. A lot of us are. It's hard to explain. But we want to thank you so much for being on our show today, Tara. Are there any last words you'd like to impart to our listeners?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Suzanne and John, and to the viewers. Congressman Young spent nearly 50 years fighting tirelessly for our state, and I want to continue that legacy. I intend on getting out throughout Alaska and working to earn your support and your vote. Thank you.
Excellent. It's been a most pleasurable time to be with you and to get to know you and have our listeners get to know you. And I know that I have friends in Juneau who sent me messages today saying, how can I hear the Tara interview? Because everybody wants to hear this interview. So you've got a lot of fans out there. So for everybody else, if you're a supporter of Must Read Alaska, thank you so much. It really makes all of this possible for us to stand up for what's right in Alaska. We are a force for good in Alaska, and Must Read Alaska is a force to be reckoned with. There's no question about that. We really appreciate you tuning in to the conservative side of the news. And the donate button is on the right side of the page. Hit that donate button. That pays for all this technology and fancy stuff that we've got to keep going here. We will have more stories today up at mustreadalaska.com. And John, you have the podcast on Wednesday, and I understand you have Representative Laddie Shaw, right?
Yep. Representative Laddie Shaw will be on, living hero. So it'll be fun to hear from him.
And so thanks again to Charlie Pierce for Governor for sponsoring this podcast. Charlie Pierce for Governor has sponsored our podcast for the last month or 6 weeks, and we truly appreciate your support. Until next week, everybody, I'm signing off from somewhere in Alaska.